Okay, so we're going to get started on the business meeting so that we can move on. We've got lots of things on the program this evening. Basically, there are a lot of people working, some behind the scenes, some a bit more on front of the scenes, some on the scene, to bring you an excellent conference each and every year, and we try to improve it every year. And the business meeting is an opportunity for you to see some of the work that's been going on, and also we're really interested in gathering feedback and having discussions on QCrypt in general. Are we ready to start? So our agenda is, oops. Okay, so a couple minutes for each presenter. Steering committee, co-chair, that's me, PC chair, local chair, future chair. Call for, is that funny? Call for future bids, discussions, and then as promised, student paper prize, lightning talks. Okay, our organization is kind of built on this charter. If you want more information, you're welcome to go and read it. And the charter defines the roles of the various committees. Vadim, do you have some feedback? Okay, that's what I do to my students. It's not working. Okay, let's continue. So the steering committee in the last year has been formed by the following people: myself, Marcos Curti, Yikai Liu, Norbert Lukenhaus, Christian Schaffner, Kahisa Tamita, Hugo Spinden, and Kyang Zhang. Some of the work that we did, we've appointed the program committee chair, the PC chair of this year, Roger, who will tell us more about his work shortly, co-chair, Christoph Markart. Every year there's an exit survey, so we looked at the feedback, tried to incorporate that into our decisions. The new this year is a code of conduct that all of you had to agree to when you registered. The steering committee selects the tutorial and the invited speakers. We had a procedure for selecting a host for QCrypt 2019. And this week we had a meeting in person. We discussed the new PC chair, new steering committee members, and transition to next year. Okay, so news from that meeting is that we have two members that are departing. Actually, this is planned. There's a rollover, so Norbert and Christian were thanked for their 4 years of service. Thank you very much. And we even had time to invite 2 new steering committee members who have already accepted, gracefully accepted. We have Serge Fair and Christoph Markart, who are new steering committee members. Marco Curti has gracefully accepted to be the new steering committee chair, and he'll be also, Hugo Spinden will be co-chair for the next year. Okay, I'll come back a bit later, but for now we'll hear from Roger.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, I don't have very much to say, but first, this slide shows all the people that worked very hard on the program committee. So I would like to thank them, and I think everyone here should thank them too for all their hard work. So what did we do? I hope people are roughly aware of what the program committee do. So we select the contributed talks, so the ones that people submit, not the invited talks. And we try to make a good balance between theory and experiment. And so what kind of happened this year, so just so that you see some of the statistics, so we had 102 submissions for talks, and this year it was roughly 50-50 between experiment and theory. So actually in previous years there was a slight bias, or at least last year, I think I had the slides from last year, it said something like 40% experiment last year, but now it's gone up to 50. What did we do? So all the submissions came in, and then we assigned these to the members of the program committee. Each submission was assigned 3 members, and they either wrote the reviews themselves or got someone else to, they invited someone else to help them do that. And in the end, we decided on 27 papers to accept, of which 2 were merged. And the final acceptance came out at about 45% experiment and 55 theory. So we didn't, I mean, I was kind of keeping an eye on making sure the balance was correct, but we didn't actually have to really fiddle this. This kind of naturally came out without sort of ditching, say an experimental paper for a theory deliberately or vice versa. Okay, and then after we had decided on the talks, we then had to look at the poster submissions. So we had a couple of weeks to discuss these. In the end, we basically accepted everything that was not off topic. So we looked through and we decided that only about 5 of the papers were off topic, or at least not clearly on topic. So we wrote to some of these people to ask them maybe they could actually try to make the connection to crypto better. And those that managed to do that were accepted, and everything, the others weren't. Okay, and the final thing we did was we decided on the student prize that will be awarded a bit later by a vote amongst the eligible papers. Okay, so that's the summary of what we did.
Yes, thank you very much, Roger, for your hard work. Local chair, Kang was both local chair and chair of the steering committee.
Thank you, Anne. And okay. Here are some information. The participants, we have 202 students, 194 regular, and the sponsor, exhibitor, media, about 90. So in total, about 486. And of course, there should be some. I don't know. It may. I think it's maybe around 500, but we didn't. We do not have the data. Some people just come in, and we have 30. So comparing to the QCrypt2017, 334, we have 150 more. And for the balance, it's better. We have about 392 male and 94 female. In that sense, it's good. Huh? Yeah, and for the public lecture given by Andrew Yao, the name is The Advent of Quantum Computing. Around 700 audience attend. And then the dinner at Pearl Hall, around 270 attendance after dinner talk by Jian Wei. So after our journey to a quantum world. And the visit tours, we have the lab tour, and also this is the lab tour. And also we date with the Mrs. satellite. You can see it's on Tuesday night, and you can see that the green spot is the satellite. It just pass around Shanghai. Yeah. Okay, so for the budget, the budget is about 2.3 million Chinese yuan. Of course, this Chinese yuan, not US dollars. Otherwise, it's insane. But still, it's a lot, I should say. Yeah. And we spend on the venue about 45%. It's the most luxurious convention center in Shanghai, so it's the most kind of budget. And for the travel registration, 10%. The dinner, 20%. Technical support, about 20%, including the screen and photograph, 5%. And for the funding, we get about 30% from the registration, 5% from your banquet, and the sponsorship from the USDC from our university, we got 20%. And exhibitor, we get about 35%. So in total, we have some 0.3 million Chinese yuan. We do not find any place to provide, then our group can sponsor that. Yep. So here are our sponsors. They are really, I really thank the sponsors. This year, the The sponsors, I didn't compare, I just compared with last year. The sponsor is a little bit, the sponsor fee is a little bit higher than last year. But because you are here, it's not free for this hall, so yeah. And also, of course, our university and our group. Okay, the most important part. I would like to thank my team, my local organization team. First, Fei Hu. Fei Hu take care, when I was not here, Fei Hu take care of almost all the things. He take care of the lab tour and a lot of things. And I think you know him. And also Xiong Feng. Xiong Feng is take care about the paper submission things. And Jun take care about the sponsorship. And Yu Huai, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know. Maybe this version, I didn't contain his photo, but Yu Huai, could you stand up? Okay, yeah. This guy made this slide and other things. Anyway, the background. And also Jian Yu, could you stand up? Yeah, Jian Yu. Jian Yu just take care about our website and also a lot of things. And the most important thing is these two leading the 60 volunteers. I'll show you later. And also, I would like to thank my my secretary team. We have Sai Hu. You get an email from her. She is in charge to sending invitation letter to you guys. And Ms. Chuanfang Wang, Ms. Honghua Zhao take care about the finance things, and Ms. An for the sponsorship. Where are you? I would like to thank to you. Oh yeah, they're here. Yeah, thank you. And also the conference managing team here. And yeah, they really help us a lot. Thank you. Yeah, just a lot of last minute call. For example, ask for some network, ask for some performance, and yeah. And also the technical support, you can see the people stand there. Thank you. And also the people to take graph and photos. And okay, our 60 student volunteers, too much. But yeah, they really help us a lot. Here's the picture. And thank you. Thanks for them. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
A question.
Yep.
Are you going to publish abstracts on the website? Submitted abstracts. So the abstracts that people submitted for posters and talks, are they going to appear on the website? Also, what about the presentation slides? Are you collecting this?
Sorry, didn't hear clearly.
The abstracts submitted to the conference, are they going to be published?
This is a good question, but probably not for the local organizer. And we do have the abstract, and I think probably we will put it out. I mean, as previous QCrypt conference, we will put all. I mean, we will talk with the authors. And if the author is okay, we will put all the slides on the website, and including the video. And for the abstract, I'm not quite sure, but I think the conference book, you have the abstract. Yeah.
If I may, there was no implicit or explicit mention that the abstracts would be published. So at this point, if we wanted to, we would ask the authors, because we've had complaints in the past, actually, for having posted things without permission. So that's definitely possible, but only with permission of the authors. Let's take a vote. Who would like to have the abstracts posted with permission of the authors? Yeah, I mean, there's interest, so we can definitely work on that. Okay, so future chair report is coming up. Oui, c'est toi, future local chair.
C'est juste que c'est vraiment bizarre.
It's not her fault. She's not using a Mac at the moment. And how do I? Well, okay. So, anyways, that's Montreal. So the next QCrypt, as I said, will be in Montreal. The dates are there from 26 to 30 of August. That's just after crypto, for those who will go to crypto in Santa Barbara. But in fact, more precisely, it's just after the NIST conference, which will be just after crypto. So you could combine Santa Barbara and Montreal if you come from abroad. So there are 4 organizers, as you can see, 3 universities. And it will take place at Université du Québec à Montréal in a nice little place called Cœur des Sciences, which is the downtown. It's in the heart of the Quartier Latin, so the very, very nice neighborhood with a lot of activities and restaurants. Banquet will be probably this. It's likely that the banquet will be at the Science Museum. Montreal is easy to access. If you're bored with a conference, you can rent a bike and try the path. Lots of restaurants. The underground network is mostly useful in winter, and there's unlikely to be much snow in August, unfortunately. All right, it's an old city as far as North America is concerned, and lots of languages. All right, so anyways, so we're looking forward to seeing you, and again, you should try to find a sheep in those slides. Yes? That's right. But otherwise, any question, and you don't get free registration for that, sorry. So if there are any questions, it's clear? All right, thank you.
Okay. The next thing is a call for proposals to host QCrypt 2020. We've just heard about QCrypt 2019, promises to be really exciting, and we're looking for a fantastic host for 2020. This announcement is already on the website, and proposals from Europe are preferred just because of the rotation that we've been following. If you're interested, the first step is an expression of interest due by November 1st with some simple information, and then the steering committee will get back to you and will ask people to write a more detailed proposal. A reminder, please fill out the exit survey. If you go to the main page of QCrypt and click on the link, the QCrypt exit survey is available, and we're looking for your input in order to improve the conference. And now, time for open discussion, questions, comments. Many of the people who are organizing are here, so just raise your hand if you want to say something.
Are you publishing the videos?
Oh, yeah, what about the videos? Are they going to be published?
Yeah, we will ask for the author's authorization. If they are okay, then we will publish, but probably not on YouTube. Maybe in Tencent. Or, I don't know, Baidu. Or, anyway, yeah, you can get access from United States. Yeah, the slides will also be, yeah, indeed.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Of course, any other comments, feel free to contact us or use the exit survey. Do I see any other hands? Okay. Moving forward to the prize ceremony. So I would like to ask the local chair and the PC chair to present the awards. So the one time we're looking for the photographer, I can't find him. It's funny. Do you want to say anything?
Okay, so the first prize is for the student paper prize. So this is for the contributed submission that had a significant contribution made by a student. So when people submitted to the conference, they were invited to tick a box to alert us to that fact. And from those submissions, based on the vote, we have awarded the prize to Wenyang Wang. So if you'd like to come up.
Okay, so for the best poster, since we have two sessions, so we have two poster prize. The first one for Monday. Okay, we give to the Wang Shiyu. This guy is doing some civic QKD in free space. And I don't know whether you order state that. The prize including $100 and also a silk scarf from Shanghai. Yep. Okay, the second one goes to Wednesday session. Mao Yingqiu, the integrating quantum key distribution with classical communication in backbone and fiber network. I asked. I say that if she couldn't come, there will be awkward. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So excuse me, I hear from my student, she's sick today, so she's just outside for medicine. Sorry about that.
Okay, anyway, so maybe then I should say something about this one. So this day, people may ask something that cannot be asked about the integration. And this paper basically tells that QKD can work together with some 60 Bps classical communication in one single fiber in the field in about 80 kilometers. So that means QKD can be integrated with fiber optical communication. Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of the business meeting and prize ceremony. So we're going to go straight to the lightning talks.
Oh, all right. So while Vadim sets up, in principle, all the lightning talk speakers have uploaded their talks in the main computer, but Vadim had a font problem, not fun, but font. So that's why he's using his own computer, and then we'll switch to the general computer, and then I will be able to show again the schedule. Each speaker has a maximum of 6 minutes and 40 seconds.
Okay, Jill, thank you very much for letting me. So the timer starts?
Yeah.
Okay, Jill, thank you very much for letting me speak first. Owing to the time restriction, I have left all the funny slides home, so I will be very serious in this talk. Today, I want to ask an open question to the community. The question is, can we use statistics to do relevant practical risk estimates for practical vulnerabilities based on equipment imperfections? So suppose we have 50 different commercial industrial QKD systems. This is probably the right estimate. Around 50 systems exist today. And we have a new vulnerability, security vulnerability. How many systems do you need to test before you believe you know whether the vulnerability is serious or not? Do you need to worry about it or not? So I'm going to speak about the vulnerabilities which are complex, which do not have a clear physical model behind. not all vulnerabilities don't have this model. For example, the photon number splitting attack has a clear physical model. Once you describe the attack theoretically, you don't need to test any systems. You know to which systems this attack will apply. Or the Trojan horse attack. Once you test one system and you confirm, yes, there are bug reflections, you can just calculate to which systems this attack will apply. But there are attacks for which it is not clear whether the attack is going to work or not, because it's based on so many factors, you can't know it before you actually test each system. For example, detector vulnerabilities, or any attacks based on timing, or the one I will show next. And then it becomes a resource question, because testing, security testing takes a lot of time. How many systems do you actually need to test before you make a practically relevant conclusion about the risk? I will show it on the example of one such complex attack, a laser damage attack. The idea of the attack is the following. You take a high-power laser and point it at the QKD system and vary the parameters. At a certain point, when the power is high enough, some optical component is going to melt, have damage. It's bound to happen. The interesting question is, what is the outcome of this damage? One possible outcome, the system stops, gets broken, it stops producing the secret key. And this is a good outcome because you haven't leaked any secret to the adversary. But it is possible that the damage will create a new vulnerability. It will change the component in such a way that it opens up a security loophole. The system continues operating, but now you can exploit the loophole and eavesdrop the key. And this is such vulnerability for which you actually can't predict what will happen before you actually take the laser and start testing each system. 3 years ago, we have tested 2 QKD systems, and we have obtained security breach in either. So this is published. We come back to statistics. So what will be a relevant statistical statement of a risk? I think it is the following. We should take a notable fraction of the untested systems, for example, 20% of systems, and ask, what is the probability at least this much fraction of the systems are vulnerable to this attack? And of course, if you know that 20% are vulnerable with a high probability, then you really need to worry and start testing systems, develop countermeasures. So this is a practical conclusion, an action conclusion. If you have not tested any systems, none. An interesting thing, you can actually use statistics to calculate this probability. Bayesian statistics, Bayesian estimate. So if you have not tested any systems and you know nothing about the vulnerability, whether it will work or not, the Bayesian statistics says at least 20% of untested systems are vulnerable with 70% probability. After you have tested 2 and obtained 2 security breaches, this probability increases to near certainty, 99%. At this point, we thought, great, this is a very relevant conclusion. This is a problem, serious problem. And we tried to publish it, and we had a bit of a problem with reviewers. They said, no, bullshit, you can't make such a wide-ranging conclusion about the QKD as a whole from a teeny number of samples. So I have had to bite the bullet and test a few more systems. If you have seen, and this was presented on poster 151, so in a nutshell, we test optical attenuators, several optical attenuators against laser damage. So attenuators are used to prepare pulses of a certain mean photon number, and if you can damage it so the attenuation is reduced, the mean photon number will be increased, and then the system becomes vulnerable to attacks. So we take our crazy man with a high power laser and shoot at 4 different attenuator samples. Each one comes from same QKD system. The outcomes of testing are, one attenuator we could not damage, so the testing is inconclusive. Up to 9 watts, nothing happened. For one attenuator, we could obtain a very small and temporary decrease of attenuation, but we mostly kept breaking the samples in the process. I will give this system a big benefit of doubt and declare that the outcome is denial of service. Actually, I think we could do better, but let's state that. And for the other 2 attenuators in QKD systems, we could decrease the attenuation by several decibels, so this is successful attack. let's look back at the original statistical estimate of 3 years ago. We have already predicted that at least 20% of untested systems will be vulnerable with 99% probability. And the new testing data, 2 successes and 1 failure, fit well with this prediction. And if we run the Bayesian estimate again on the new larger data set, it says of the remaining systems, at least 20% are vulnerable with even higher probability. So I'm not sure we even needed to do this all this time-consuming testing. So my question to the community is, are we doing a same thing with statistics? And shall we from now on begin using statistical estimates to very speed up, to take a shortcut from the discovery of a new attack to a practical conclusion about the security risk against this attack? And I allege that we can make this conclusion by testing a very small number of samples to reach a relevant conclusion. I would appreciate any comments. Thank you.
These 6-minute or whatever it is includes questions. So
oh yeah, of course.
Feel free to ask some questions now, especially while we're fixing the computer.
Say it again.
What prior distribution did you assume for your...
we went with Jeffrey's prior. So we are not statisticians. So we had a really hard time reading the statistical textbooks. So the estimate was done by Jean-Philippe Bourgois, and we consulted the medical statistical guy, professor who runs like blind drug trials, and he told us that Jeffrey's prior is more suitable in this case. We also tried with uniform prior, but if you look after testing 5 samples, there is almost no difference between Jeffrey's and uniform. It only makes a little bit of difference if you are with 2 samples or 0 samples, but the outcome is the same. There is another important assumption which we had to agree with reviewers. They say the choice of samples should be completely random. And this is logistically impossible right now, but...
I'm sorry, but we should go to the next talk now. Sorry. All right, so this is a list of talks. We've had the first one already. If the next speaker could come in, please. And I need help to get his talk. Sorry, so... All right, so towards practical long-distance side channel. Oh, different title. Anyways.
So, many thanks to the organizers for giving me this chance to present a lightning talk. Well, my title is Towards Side Channel Free QKD with coherent states. We know there are side channels. There are a lot of imperfections in a practical setup. Maybe there are a lot of direct ways to solve these issues. For example, the device-independent quantum key distribution. However, in that framework, we need high-quality quantum entanglement, and also we need make sure to keep a high detection rate. Okay. However, here I propose another approach. We can make a side channel free QKD with coherent states only. Well, this is not equivalent to the device independent QKD because we still need some conditions for the result to guarantee security. We still need some conditions. However, those conditions can be verified, can be proved experimentally. Let's first take a short review on what is the problem, what is the issue we concern. Actually, I first introduced the concept of Hall space. The Hall space is a Hall space. There are two subspaces. One is the operational space. For example, in the BBAD4 quantum key distribution, the operational space is simply the polarization. Okay, and the side channel space, because any photon actually lives in its infinite dimensional Hall space rather than the simple operational space only. For example, each photon can have its frequency spectra, can have its own wave shape, and also emission time, and so on. Therefore, in principle, if can just detect a little bit difference in this side channel space to detect the state exactly, she has such a probability to make it exactly without disturbing the polarization state at all. Okay, and also our optical source can also be unstable. It can emit photon states very differently in the side channel space at different time windows. Okay, so say if we naively, if we have perfect BBAD4 states, say these four states, these are states in the polarization space, in the operational space, and also they are all identical in any side channel spaces, and the source is stable, then definitely it is a side channel free source, no problem. However, this request is very difficult to be realized in practice. In a practical setup, we don't have such a perfect BBAD4 states. However, we will first show that very importantly, a side channel free source actually does not have to be a perfect source. Okay. So we want to systematically know that which kind of imperfections, doesn't matter, which kind of imperfections will cause the security problem. We use the mapping. We use the idea of mapping, say that a source is side channel free if it can be mapped from a perfect source. Okay. The reason here is very simple. Say that we have if the actual source, although it is not perfect, it has its own side channel space. However, it can be mapped from the perfect BBAD4 states. Then it must be completely side channel free, because otherwise Eve can also attack the perfect BBAD4 states. Say if you use the perfect BBAD4 states, she can first map it to the practical to the practical states you used here, then attack it. Okay. Then what kind of states that actually can be mapped from the perfect BBAD4 states? We set the condition here. Suppose at each time window I, your source emits four candidate states. These are BBAD4 states, and these states are different from time to time. The source is side channel free, provided that these states in X basis are linear superposition of these two candidates in Z basis. That's all what we need. Because if your states from unstable optical source is in this form with these conditions, then it can be mapped from the perfect BBAD4 state. Sorry. Okay, so in such a way, this source, we can see it is much easier than the perfect BBAD4 states because of following reasons. Because of time is rather limited. Now let's show how to realize this source. Say initially we present a two-mode single photon state. Then in emitting this two-mode state, we just sometimes block this, sometimes do not block anything. Then it is just exactly the source I mentioned before. But in this way, if we only do the traditional BBAD4 protocol, that we can use this type of source to implement the measurement device independent protocol. Say Alice at this side, Bob at this side, they randomly determine whether send his mode. Okay. This is a calculation of the distance by using coherent stairs only using our scheme. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for it.
All right. Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Zhang Xiang and Fei Hu, and the two seniors gave me this opportunity to share what we are doing on chip and CV QKD. My name is Aichun Liu from Nanyang Technological University. Actually, silicon photonic technology, and they have the more than 15 history. This technology also strong support the currently fiber communication system. But if we use the same technology working on this continual variable QKD technology, then the two technology is automatically can match, support, and the quantum network. This is what we are pursue. This is borrowed slide from the Huawei and the idea. Then you can see that they have the four generation of this QKD technology at the chip level in this generation. So this is on the along of this on the direction of QKD technology. This is our design. This is on the fabrication of the chip. And then you can see this is on the silicon waveguide. This is the heater, control the mechanism, and a phase shifter. This is the photodetector. This also can mount the laser dial, and from this inside. So actually, either the receiver and the transceiver, two different chips, the laser source integration, amplitude modulator component, and phase modulator component for the Alex. The barber is a little bit challenging. I have the two photodetector plus the phase modulator. So this is two chip and the fabrication and the design. And we test one by one all of this chip, also test each component of this system. This is the modulator, and use and mechanism waveguide. This is two heater, and they give it the current. The changing the current, you can see the response of the switch. The timing is very fast for this changing the two and amp by different current to shift this phase. This is the single this is the photodetector. This is the waveguide. This is the germanium and the photodetector. This is the optic. Come to this one. This is electronic converter. This is the measurement result for this photodetector. Can meet of this speed. Actually, for this continual variable of the chip design, they need two photodetector plus this waveguide. So this is all the measurement result for this two and the photodetector of the chip. This is on a key distribution experiment. We measure on the Alex and the x-axis of the Alex and the barber, and also measure this P and the Alex and the X barber of this one in my lab, and also calculate for this simulation and the fiber distance, and this is the two chip for this fabrication. The last one, actually we build up a strong fabrication capability and the core technology and the design rule, and this use SI wafer and fabricate all of this and the chip Also can be wafer to wafer bonding the laser diode in the chip and plus on chip and the photo detector and fabrication. So this is the core technology we built up in the Singapore in the NTU. This is the first time demonstration civil QKT on chip and using this silicon photonic fabrication technology. This technology is also potential can be and in future both of fiber communication and quantum communication integration on one fiber. We measure our security key, right? We also build up this modulator, photo detector, harmonic detector technology on the chip. So this is what we're doing on the last 2 years. Thank you so much for your attention.
So if there's
One question?
Thank you for your presentation. What's the order of magnitude of the price of one chip for your system? Because as it's integrated on a chip, it's supposed to be cheap. And is it the case? What's the price?
The price. I'm so sorry. I don't have this number in the mind, but we can tell you that we use 8-inch wafer fabrication of this chip. For example, the transceiver chip, each wafer we can fabrication around 2,000 die. Okay. This is the very low cost on the chip of this one. We use an 8-inch wafer. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Yan Bao. So here I would like to talk our most recent results. It's about device-independent quantum randomness. This is a joint work with people at NIST. So first, let me remind you the idea behind the device-independent randomness generation. So the idea was introduced in Roger Kovacs' PhD thesis. So for device-independent randomness generation, we need at least 2 local parties. So we call it Alice and Bob. So each one has a quantum device. We do not need to trust how the device works, so we model it as a black box. At each time, so Alice and Bob randomly select their measurement settings and perform measurements, get some outcomes. So they can repeat this process multiple times, and finally they can estimate the conditional distribution or output conditional on the input. So they can verify whether this distribution is local or non-local. So if it is non-local, that means the output is not a deterministic function or the input and any other set information. So in that case, we can say the output must contain randomness, even if the adversary knows the input. So that's the idea behind. So next, let me briefly summarize the previous demonstrations of randomness generation, or device-independent randomness generation. So there are several experimental demonstrations. The first one was performed in 2010, and at that time, so we can certify about the presence of 42 random bits after 1 month. And over the last 2 years, so we got more, we got a lot of improvements. So there are several demonstrations. 2 of them is based on loop-free bell tests. So one is performed at NIST, so they certify randomness against the classical set information. So the other one is at here. So it's certified against the quantum set information. The result is pretty good. So we can, so for example, the results at Shanghai, so we can they certified 62 megabits at their security levels. 10 to minus 5. However, there are some things we can improve. That is the time cost. So if you say the results of the most recent results at Shanghai, so you can see the time cost, the randomness generation as a function of the time cost. So obviously you can see at the first 13 hours, we can't certify any random bits. After that, we can gradually accumulate randomness. This is when the security level is, or the error bound is 10 to minus 5. Suppose we want to achieve higher security level, so it needs much longer time. So we call this time the time delay, the latency. So we want to minimize this latency. So for this, we developed a much efficient method to do finite data analysis. And we consider a particular task. Suppose we want to generate 512 random bits. At the error bound is 2 to minus 64. It is very high security level. And we demonstrate this in experiments. So we run the experiments several times, and each time we can succeed. And that's the time cost for each case. So on average, we need 5 minutes to certify 512 random bits in the device independent way. Several remarks. So our method now works against the quantum set information. Also, for loophole-free bell test, usually we need some input randomness. They were selected by traditional quantum random number generator, and there are bias in the input randomness. So our method can take into account the bias and to certify random bits. Finally, let me briefly mention how our method works. I have a poster about this. Here, I just mentioned a brief idea. So we quantify the randomness by the smooth mean entropy. So that's the mean entropy, smooth mean entropy, or the output conditional on the input and the quantum set information EU. To achieve this goal, we use some literature results. So the first one is we wanted to lower bound the smooth mean entropy by sandwich the running entropy. And then we develop some optimization method so that we can directly bound the sandwich running entropy. That's our major contribution. So this step is different from entropy accumulation, I should say. So entropy accumulation also wanted to bound the sandwich running entropy, but it use additional inequalities. But we directly bound the sandwich running entropy, so that's why we can show improvements. Thank you very much.
There is 10 seconds for questions. And while the next speaker sets up, please.
Have you checked your outcome with the various classical standard and criteria for the quality of randomness?
Sorry.
Have you checked your outcome, your experimental outcome by the various standard criterions and standards, classical standards?
Oh, you mean?
What's the result?
The test randomness, output randomness.
Right.
We didn't perform explicitly, so I think it should pass the NIST randomness test. So.
I don't know what's going on, but the next talk should start as soon as it's on the screen. There it is.
Oh.
All right, let's go.
Oh, sorry.
So, thank you everyone for coming here today. It's a great.
Sorry, I didn't see it.
It's okay. That's an honor for me to be here, and I'll try to present our work, which based on the overcoming of an ambiguous state discrimination attack using the Schrödinger cat. So, here you can see that I said that it's sort of decoy state, but it's not usual decoy state. We just use it to decrease the probability of discrimination states by if, and the main idea of this work looks like that. We are trying to implement the protocol there. We have two coherent states and one additional state which will help us to decrease the probability of discrimination of all the states. So what should we do? First of all, we should send them with the a priori probability. The probability of sending both signal states U1 and U2 should be equal and should be really high. And the probability of sending the decoy states supposed to be really low. So what are we doing next? So the main idea of this work to make the probability of discrimination of all the states, both decoy and signal, equal to 0. And we tried to implement it in any way. So here you can see that we're using the standard technique for an ambiguous state discrimination attack, and we are trying to define the overlappings of the state, and they look like that. It's the usual thing, so I won't tell anything about it here because I have too little time now. And what should if to do? She should construct the correct poem to discriminate states. And here you can see that the main idea of our work is to make the probability of if maximum and somehow deal with it. So from here you can see that to minimize the probability of inconclusive result for if, we should deal with the next two equations. So I'm not sure that it's working. Sorry. So here you can see that we should solve these equations, and it means that our determinant of inconclusive results for if should equal to 0, and then it is so. We are interested in the points PD and PS, which means the probability of discrimination decoy state and signal state surface bounded by the curves. And so you can see here that we are trying to nullify them, and to do so, to make them equal to 0, we should make equal to 0 this delta. And this delta is shown here, and it's made of the overlapping of the states. To do so, the easiest way to implement it is to use somehow the linear superposition of these two coherent states to overcome it. And the best solution here to use the Schrödinger-Cat decoy state. And if you do so, the probability of discrimination decoy state and also the signal states will be equal to 0, which make this attack impossible for such protocols. But it is obvious that this solution is quite challenging experimentally, so we should deal with it in a way. And we have several proposals for it, and the main idea that we can use instead of Schrödinger-Cat states, something like even coherent squeezed states. So it's pretty the same, but it has a little bit different coefficients in the amplitude, but we still can overcome the USD in this way. So thank you for your attention.
Well, there's time for questions. More than usual, I would say. In the back there.
Could you show the last slide?
Sorry,
last
I can't hear you.
Because I'm curious, because it seems that the three states are linearly dependent, yes?
Yes.
But then you cannot you cannot perform the conclusive state discrimination, yes?
That's exactly the point. They are using this coherent, this third state.
So
only
then why could you obtain the minimal the minimum error probability?
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Can you repeat, please?
Because you would like to obtain the conclusive discrimination, yes? But the three states are linearly dependent, yes?
Yes.
But then you cannot perform this protocol. right?
Yeah, for sure. But I haven't mentioned it. I'm sorry about that. The only thing that we would like to know about this state is the detection rate of these states. For us, it doesn't really depend on errors. It can be errors, it can be correct counts, but it still should be only the rate. Because if cannot implement any technique to provide the same rate, which will be without this decoy state. Because she has a 0 probability to discriminate it. She doesn't know in which counts she should send decoy states, and so the detection rate will be lower.
All right, so let's thank the speaker again. Next speaker on quantum Wikipedia. There was Wikipedia in the title I had. Go.
Good evening. I'm Shraddha Singh. I'm working at Paris Center for Quantum Computing, and I'm glad to introduce you to our new project with Quantum Internet Alliance, the Quantum E-Library. Our motive is to help people explore, learn, and implement quantum protocols. Well, with the advent of vast number of protocols, there is an urgent need for a standardization process, one that would account for a compressed and concise manner to present all the existing protocols. And this is what it's all about. The questions I'd be addressing in this talk are as follows, as in what it is, who does it aim, and how to access this quantum E-library. So starting off with a very obvious question, what is quantum E-library? Well, adapting Scott Aronson's complexity zoo term, I would like to call it a protocol zoo, which consists of the categorization of all the existing quantum protocols, which will direct you to a simplified and shorthand representation of the different types of protocols. And also, we propose to illustrate the use cases which would act as a bridge to cover the gap between quantum computer scientists and the users to extract all out of a given quantum protocol and the requirements of a given protocol. Well, now the next question is, who is it for? And the answer would be everyone interested in quantum communication. Be it the computer scientists who want to work for to make the achieved security and complexity bounds better, or the experimentalists who would like to know the difficulty level of the implementation of a certain protocol, or be it the industries that would want to know with their given lab setup, what are the list of protocols that they can implement. We understand that it's a very dynamic, quantum computation is at a very dynamic stage, and so is our E-library. So once we have ample number of protocols, to show you as an example, the format, we would welcome you to join us by sending a request to include eventually your protocol to the link we propose to provide soon. And for this project, we have a postdoc position available at Paris Center for Quantum Computing under Professor Elham Kashefi, and you can contact her via the link given. And here are a few links for Quantum Internet Alliance to get any further information until the launch of this library. And thank you. That was short.
Well, if there is a prize for the shortest talk, you will win it. Thank you. But so there's plenty of time for questions if there are. Yeah, Vadim?
Well, we'll have a Google form, and you just have to submit your paper, and we'll transform into the given format.
Oh, so we can actually send you a research paper about the new protocol, and you will fill the forms. So we only need to email you the research paper. Is this right?
Yep.
Great.
So you don't have to do anything. We'll do the whole, the entire thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks again. right, next talk. The Feynman on counterfactual communication is possible after all.
Counterfactual communication is something which I strongly believe is impossible. It's really amazing protocol. Alice and Bob, and Alice can send to Bob classical information, even quantum information, in such a way that no particle go between Alice and Bob. We need a quantum channel. We don't need any classical information. We don't need any preliminary entanglement, but we do need a quantum channel, but in which particles are supposed to go. But when we succeed in our protocols, they do not go. It's counterfactual. They go only in cases when the protocol is failed. And this happened with only very tiny probability. Now, in fact, 1 year ago, in QCrypto, I gave a talk saying that this is impossible. And now I have to admit my mistake. I think it is possible. So, the simplest counterfactual communication, this was done by Elitsur and myself 25 years ago. And this I was always thought is okay. The communication is if there is a particle or there is no particle, there is an object here. So how I can know that there is an object in some place without being near, without touching it, without sending any particle? I have to arrange Mach-Zehnder interferometer, which is tuned in such a way that when it's empty, nothing goes here. And when I run it and I get a click, so I know that it's not this situation. It must be this situation. It cannot be otherwise. So first I know that the object is there. And second, I also know that the photon was not there. Because if it would be there, it would never come to my detector. It would be absorbed by the object. This looks like... Okay. So this, I think it's a real thing. But then, several years later, people found a method how to do the opposite thing, how to find that the place is empty in a counterfactual way without sending particle near it. So this is another interferometer, slightly more complicated, from which I can know that the place is empty. This place is, this doesn't really cooperate, maybe. This place is, the point O is empty, and I can know that it's empty without being there, because I tune it in such a way that when it's not empty, then this detector is you was right about it doesn't. If I block it, this cannot click. If I see the click there, so I know that it's empty, because if it would not be empty, the click there, here is impossible. I cannot get click here when it's empty, so I know. And I also know that the photon was not there, because if the photon would be there, it would never come here. So this was counterfactual communication. People built on this, not just this protocol, they put these things together.
Put the microphone
put these things together, and they arranged sending the full communication, both 0 and 1. 1, it's present, 0, it's not present. Moreover, they also made quantum communication. They could send even quantum states from Alice to Bob in this way. Now, but I felt that it cannot be true. And what I found that really this protocol is not good. Although the particle could not be in A, but it leave a trace there. And if the particle leave a trace there, I said, no, if particle leave a trace there, it was there. There is no standard meaning if particle is there or not. If it left a trace, it's left exactly the same trace there as in a place where we believe. In C, we believe it was there, but it leave in A, the same trace. So how I could calculate and know that it was there? By two-state vector formalism. It's pre and post-selected particle, and to find where there is a trace, you move forward and backward along the wave function. In overlap, there is a trace. So I found there is a trace, so it's not counterfactual. Therefore, all these results, there are Kviat result, Zuberi result, and then there is a quantum result. All this, this is really counterfactual communication. I wrote 3 papers saying that they're all wrong. Succeed to publish in to PRL, say, no, it doesn't work. Because it's not counterfactual. But I was trying to explain this to Aronov, and he said, no, I didn't convince him that it's impossible. And when in the process, I found a way how to correct this. I was right that all these protocols were not counterfactual. All these protocols, really, there was a trace, so they were not counterfactual. But there is a simple way to repair them. This is the way, counterfactual way to find that there is no object without being there. I use essentially the same method, but twice. I have this interferometer and another one, and it connects them by double-sided mirror. So here it's also, if it comes here, it will come out this way. Now, I tune it in such a way that if I block both interferometers, then of course this will leak here. It's not balanced. Now it will go here. It's against block, so it's balanced here. Now this cannot click because there is destructive interference. So if I run it and I get a click, I know, as before, now I know that the object was not present there. But now there is no trace there. Because if I run my backward evolving wave function and forward evolving wave function, they never meet on the right side. This is a trace. The trace is only on the left side. So this is really counterfactual. So this means that counterfactual, all these protocols could be easily repaired. All what we have to do, we have to replace this module, which is not counterfactual because there is a trace and the particle really leave a trace in this place, by this modified model. If I change every unit like this by double unit, all these protocols work perfectly, and they're really counterfactual. So now I believe something which seems to me kind of impossible, but it's possible. You can send information, classical information, quantum information from Alice to Bob without any particles in transmission channel. Now, the meaning of any particle, it means there is no trace in the transmission channel, no trace whatsoever. The channel is such that if you send a particle, they leave a trace. It leaves a trace. But it's complicated interferometer. You send your particle, and in case you get it back, it's never going inside the channel. So no trace whatsoever. In some way, it's stronger than teleportation. No classical communication, no entanglement, and you move quantum state from one place to another with arbitrarily high probability, with leaving no trace whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you. There is no time for questions, sorry. So next talk, Charlie Bennett. Will tell us about the unsuitability of device-independent protocols for quantum key distribution and public randomness beacons.
This is why DIY, which is a British English for do-it-yourself, is as a method of generating randomness for practical purposes, is much better or more secure than device-independent randomness. So a DIY random number generator is one that you build yourself rather than buying from someone that you don't trust, or even making it from parts from a supplier you don't trust. And you could have a device-independent and also do it yourself, but you'd have to be very good because device-independent equipment involves entangled light sources and detectors and so on. So if I was going to try to do that, I would hire Vadim to do it for me. But I still wouldn't be sure that it would work right. And speaking of Vadim, here's, yeah, okay, well, before I speak of him, besides having near maximal entropy, when you want the random numbers for a password generation or generating a shared key, it should be unknown to anyone else. But the other use of random numbers is for public randomness, like for casinos and lotteries, where the requirements are different. It should be unknown to anyone until it's generated and known to everyone afterwards. So here's my picture of Vadim, and he gave a nice reason why you shouldn't trust any random number generator that you buy from somebody else. And that is that it's with modern microelectronic technology, it's pretty easy to hide a Trojan horse of this sort in any sort of equipment, so that at a particular time or when receiving some particular outside signal, the random number stream it stops and is replaced by pre-recorded random numbers, which you've sold to your customer who wants to buy a lucky lottery ticket. So that's really the problem with non-DIY random number generators. So it's a question of trusting nature versus trusting people. Now, Bell violations are very good for proving to yourself that nature is not fooling you. But they are like a zero knowledge proof. They don't give you the ability to convince someone else that you're not fooling them. So how do you build this trust? For private randomness, I would argue that it's better to build your own random number generator, and you could optionally XOR it with one or more commercial random number generators, or even a device-independent commercial random number generator. But you shouldn't bring this device-independent commercial random number generator anywhere near your lab. For public randomness, I think the only solution is to use several physically and administratively independent sources and XOR or hash them together. So each one of them would follow a standard format like the NIST beacon, but people have good reasons or maybe paranoid reasons for not trusting the NIST beacon. And so you would have to XOR several of them together to get a result that would be unpredictable, even if only one of them is honest. So now for quantum key distribution, there's a similar problem. If you want to use public communication, well, in the device-independent protocols, you use public communication to distill a secret key from correlations between two untrusted devices. But if these untrusted devices are built by your adversary and are in your, well, whether they're in your laboratory or not, actually, there's no practical, feasible way of preventing them from having a covert channel to leak all their information eventually to Eve. Now, covert channels, anybody who's a practical hacker of systems, your covert messages could masquerade as noise or even fluctuations in response to external probing. And they could be anywhere in the electromagnetic or acoustic spectrum, or more exotic things like emitting neutrons, which most people are not looking for, or even chemical signals that insects use to signal with great efficiency to one another. So it's just not practical to prevent a covert channel, and therefore you should use protocols like measurement device independence, which don't have the problem of you let Eve say everything she wants to everyone she wants, and it doesn't harm your ability to distill a key, as long as the sources that you have built don't have an accidental covert channel. And so the moral of the story is that ever since the Trojan War, it's been a very bad idea to bring a device designed by your adversary into your trusted enclosure. Thank you.
It's time for one question.
So this is a perspective that's been put forward before, but would you be satisfied with perceiving DI-QKD as instead saying, let's not literally buy the devices from the adversary, but instead let's treat them more or less like standard QKD devices, except we have less characterization to do for the devices. So we just test them for side channel leakage instead of having to check that all the, well, either that the source preparation or the measurement device is sufficiently characterized.
I think this would be a statistical problem too hard for Vadim. That is, if you want to trust it a little bit, but its designer has still the same incentive to trick you into producing a key that you think is secret. That's like an infinite incentive, and so you should be infinitely suspicious, is what I would say.
Does this work? Yes. All right. So maybe Charlie will say that I'm the next speaker.
Oh, this is Gilles Brassard. He's the next speaker.
Thank you, Charlie. All right. Next and last speaker of this session. I was sort of inspired to tell you about this because of some things that happened earlier in this conference by people talking about loophole-free experiments. So a few years ago, in the New York Times and just about every other newspaper, there were stories about Einstein being wrong again. Journalists seem to like very much using Einstein in their headlines, especially if they can say that he was wrong, although they also like to say he was right on occasion. In this case, this was caused by the Delft experiment. So what the headline said is that scientists in Delft proved that objects separated by a great distance can instantaneously affect each other. And again, this was a Delft experiment with Hansen and Hansen, not to be confused, who were the first to successfully perform what is usually referred to as a loophole-free Bell inequality experiment. And what loophole-free means in this context is that all previous experiments to violate Bell's inequality had one loophole or another, such as a detection loophole or the locality loophole, or something was not quite convincing. So what these people did for the first time was to have the single experiment that plugged all the possible loopholes. That's why we call it a loophole-free experiment. But it's not. There's no such thing as a loophole-free experiment for Bell's inequality, and that's what I want to tell you about. So let me explain what I mean by a signaling. I want to explain to you what is a non-signaling theory. So let me first tell you what is signaling. So signaling means that you have our two favorite characters, Alice and Bob, and Alice has, so Alice has a device with a dial, and she can turn the dial one way or another. And if Alice turns the dial to banana, for instance, then instantaneously at Bob's appears, in this case, Jeff Bubb's book. So Jeff Bubb wrote a book, that's a tongue twister, called Banana World, and in the small print is Quantum Mechanics for Primates. In any case, the point of this signaling theory is that when Alice turns the dial to banana, immediately, instantaneously, this book appears at Bob's. And if she instead turns the book to rabbit, not the book, but the dial to rabbit, then Colin Bruce's book on Schrodinger's rabbit appears at Bob. And the point is that this is instantaneous and that Bob can tell. So Bob knows which signal Alice wanted to send him. So in a signaling theory, Alice can do something which has an observable consequence immediately at a remote location. Whereas a non-signaling theory is just the opposite. In a non-thinning theory, when Alice turns the dial to banana, a ghost appears at Bob, but Bob cannot see ghosts. And if instead Alice turns to rabbit, then the same ghost appears but upside down. But in any case, Bob cannot tell the difference. Bob cannot see a ghost or the absence of a ghost, or if the ghost is upside down or right side up. So in this case, whatever Alice does, it has an effect at Bob's. There is some instantaneous effect at Bob's, but nothing observable. So that's what non-signaling means. A non-signaling theory is one in which no observable effect can occur remotely, instantaneously. So Bob does not know what Alice has done. This may look spooky because I have ghosts here, but it's not really spooky in the sense that this is exactly the way quantum theory works. In quantum theory, if Alice and Bob share a Bell state, let's say in photon polarization, and if Alice measures rectilinearly or diagonally, she makes appear at Bob a photon which is either rectilinear or diagonal, which is non-observable, but seems to be something that occurs at Bob's. So standard quantum theory is non-signaling. We all agree on that, but it seems to be non-local because something happens at Bob's. Whereas in local theory, if Alice turns to banana, nothing happens at Bob's. And at rabbit, the same nothing happens at Bob. So that's what the local theory is. In a non-signaling theory, it's allowed that something happens remotely as long as it's not observable. Whereas in a local theory, nothing at all should occur. All right. Now, here's the point is that there are two theorems. One is that the Popescu-Ehrlich non-local boxes, if you know what they are, these are fantasy objects, but they would violate Bell's inequalities even more than quantum theory. Well, in fact, non-local boxes can be implemented, quote, implemented, in a fantasy world, but a fantasy world that's local realistic. And the way to do that is quite simple, like this. And the point is that this is the simplest possible proof that a mere violation of Bell's inequality does not rule out local realism, because there is a fantasy world in which Bell's inequality is violated even more than quantum theory, and yet that fantasy world is local realistic. So in no case can you say that because you have violated Bell's inequalities with all possible loopholes taken care of, but that doesn't prove anything, because violating Bell's inequality is not incompatible with local realism. Theorem number 2, which is a generalization of this, any theory that's non-signaling can be made local realistic. So no matter what theory you have in mind, if in terms of what can be observed it does not allow signaling, well, that theory can be explained in a way that's local realistic. So that includes quantum mechanics, of course, which is non-signaling. I need to, there's a small caveat here. The theorem requires the non-signaling theory to have reversible dynamics. So this would apply to unitary quantum theory. All right, and the proof is really quite simple. Sorry, before that, how is that possible? You might say, how is that possible? Doesn't it contradict Bell's theorem? Right, so you might think that Bell said that it's impossible for nature to be local realistic, at least if by nature we mean that the quantum mechanics is correct at the observable level. So you probably think that Bell's theorem says that quantum theory, if indeed it violates Bell's inequalities, then it cannot be explained in a local realistic way. This is not what Bell said in his original paper. He did say that, but much later. In his very last paper in his career, called Nouvelle Cuisine, Bell said that. But in his original paper, he did the right thing, which is that it's impossible to explain nature with local invariables. And that's different. That's different. And therefore, in order to get around Bell's theorem, what you have to do is find a way to be local realistic without introducing local hidden variables. What Bell correctly proved is that any theory that violates these inequalities, any such theory cannot be explained with local hidden variable. That's correct. It's a mathematical truth. But that as such does not rule out being local realistic. You just have to be local realistic in a different way than with local hidden variables. And this is how to do it. All right? So I'll stop here. But I have posters that show on both sides these two things. So if you want to know more about how to get a local realistic world for non-local boxes on one side, or for any non-singular theory, including quantum theory on the other side, you're free to take some of them. I should say that the fact that quantum theory can be made local realistic is not my invention. It was discovered at the end of last century by Deutsch and Hayden. Whereas this work was done by my former student, Paul Raymond Robichaud. It's more recent. All right, I stop here. Thank you very much. And it's the end of the lightning session. So again.